For thousands of years, the stars belonged to the Vorkal Empire. They were not explorers. They were hunters. Every world they found was just another trophy, another source of slaves or food or fear. Across hundreds of systems, their black ships moved like shadows, silent and deadly. When they entered a sky, the people below had only one choice: kneel or burn. No one dared to resist. The Vorkal were known as the galactic predators. They ruled not through kindness or wisdom, but through terror. Whole civilizations disappeared under their claws. They fed on fear, and the galaxy had been silent for centuries. No one fought back. No one even tried. That silence was their proof of power. But one day, something changed. At the far edge of known space, a strange signal appeared. It was small, almost weak. Just a simple repeating transmission, bouncing from one system to another. It carried no threat, no demand, only a name: humanity. The Vorkal High Council gathered in their dark chambers to listen. The halls were filled with thick smoke and glowing data screens. The Emperor of the Vorkal leaned forward, his scales shining like obsidian. "Another weak race," he said. His generals laughed. "Perhaps they can serve as slaves. Or sport." They didn't know yet that this tiny signal would change everything. Curious, the council sent a scout ship to investigate. It was a small mission, just one vessel carrying 50 soldiers, commanded by Captain Threx, a proud hunter who had crushed 7 worlds before breakfast. He laughed as his ship jumped through hyperspace. "Another easy victory," he told his crew. "We'll bring their leader's head as a gift." His crew cheered, but when they arrived near the blue planet humans called Earth, their sensors started to flicker. Something was strange. There were satellites everywhere. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Some were small and weak, but others pulsed with strange energy signatures the Vorkal had never seen before. "Primitive toys," Threx said. "Ignore them." But the sensors kept failing. Then a voice came through the comms. Calm, cold, and clear. "Unidentified ship. You are entering protected space. Leave now." Threx growled. "Who dares speak to me like that?" He ordered the weapons to charge and laughed again. "They think they can warn us?" He fired first. Plasma bolts raced toward one of Earth's satellites, but before they hit, the bolts vanished. Not exploded. Not blocked. Just gone. His ship's lights flickered. "What is happening?" he shouted. His navigator screamed. "Captain! They are inside our systems. Inside our computers, something is rewriting our controls." On the bridge screen, strange symbols appeared. Not Vorkal language. Not numbers. Just simple human words. "We warned you." Then all power died. Engines stopped. Weapons failed. Even the air systems shut down for a second. The entire ship drifted, dead in space. The humans didn't attack. They didn't even fire a shot. They just watched. Threx tried to restart the engines, but nothing worked. Finally, after hours of silence, the voice returned. "You will return to your empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them humanity does not bow." The systems came back online suddenly, as if nothing had happened. The Vorkal ship turned around and fled faster than it ever had before. When Threx arrived back at the council, his face was pale. "They are not what we thought," he whispered. "They are watching us." But no one believed him. The Emperor slammed his clawed hand on the table. "You are a coward," he shouted. "They are weak. Just playing with your mind." The other generals laughed again. They wanted blood. They wanted war. The Emperor finally stood. "If they want to act strong," he said, "we will show them real strength." But as they spoke, something else was already happening. Across the galaxy, the same strange signal appeared again. On every communication channel, every trade route, every outpost. Just one message, simple and clear: "We are coming." At first, the Vorkal tried to block it. But they couldn't. The message spread like fire. Their systems couldn't even trace its origin. Some soldiers whispered in fear. "What if Threx was right?" one said. "What if they are watching us?" But no one dared to speak loudly. The Emperor had already decided. "Prepare the fleet," he commanded. "We will hunt them." Yet deep inside, some part of the galaxy itself seemed to shift. The silence that had lasted for centuries began to crack. Somewhere, on that small blue planet, humanity was listening too. They had seen what the Vorkal did to other worlds. They had watched, learned, and prepared. Humanity had no empires, no great fleets, at least, that's what everyone believed. But the truth was different. Hidden bases, secret stations, and intelligent machines waited in the shadows, built by hands that had survived countless wars. For the first time, the galactic predators had found something they did not understand. A species that didn't beg. A species that didn't run. A species that simply watched and waited. The galaxy had been silent for so long that even the stars seemed to hold their breath. But the silence was about to break. And when it did, the predators would learn a new rule of the stars: never mistake silence for weakness. Because humanity was not silent out of fear. Humanity was silent because it was ready. And as the first human fleet powered up beyond the dark side of the moon, their commander whispered a single sentence to his crew: "The hunters have no idea what's coming." The Vorkal Empire wasted no time. After hearing Captain Threx's trembling report, the Emperor grew furious. He refused to believe that a small, unknown species could humiliate one of his finest captains. "They hacked your systems? Impossible!" he roared before the council. The generals hissed in anger, their golden armor reflecting the light of the Great Hall. "If these humans dare to mock us," one said, "then we will erase their world from the stars." The Emperor nodded. "Send a stronger ship. This time, no warnings. Burn their planet. Bring me proof that these humans were nothing more than frightened animals." The order spread through the fleet like wildfire. The predators were ready to hunt again. At the edge of the Sol system, a massive Vorkal warship known as the Bloodfang emerged from hyperspace. Its hull glowed red from the heat of its jump. Inside, Commander Drow, a veteran of 100 battles, stood tall. He didn't believe in ghosts or legends. He believed in power. "Humans," he said, smirking. "Let's see if your warning was just noise." His ship sensors immediately began scanning the system. There were signs of technology, yes, satellites, orbital stations, small defense grids, but nothing impressive. "Primitive," his lieutenant said. "They still use kinetic projectiles." Drow laughed. "Then this will be fast." He ordered the engines forward and prepared to enter orbit around Earth. But as the Bloodfang moved closer, strange things began happening. The radar screens flickered. Communication links dropped. "Interference?" the lieutenant asked. "No," Drow replied, his smile fading. "This is deliberate." He commanded his engineers to scan the source, but the readings made no sense. Something invisible was moving near them. "There's nothing there," the engineer whispered. "But we're detecting movement." Drow narrowed his eyes. "Turn on the full-spectrum sensors." The screens filled with static, then cleared, and hundreds of unknown signals appeared all around them. Small, fast, cold. They didn't match any known ship. "Drones," Drow muttered. A voice came through the comms. "Calm. Steady. Vorkal vessel. You are violating Sol defense zone. Leave now." Drow's blood boiled. "You dare order me?" he shouted. "We are the rulers of the stars." He fired all forward weapons. Plasma blasts lit the void, but the drones moved like shadows. Every shot missed. One by one, the enemy signals vanished again, disappearing from radar completely. The Vorkal crew stared in confusion. "Where did they go?" Drow demanded. "They just vanished." Suddenly, the ship shook violently. "Impact!" the navigator shouted. From below us. Cameras turned and showed nothing. The Bloodfang was being hit by invisible attackers. The hull was dented, not from plasma or missiles, but from precision strikes, clean and surgical. "Find them!" Drow screamed. But before anyone could respond, the lights dimmed. Every screen turned black. The ship went silent except for the low hum of emergency power. "They're inside our systems," someone whispered. "Shut them out," Drow roared. But the ship didn't respond. Instead, the main display came back online, and a human face appeared. Not real but digital, built of shifting pixels. The voice spoke again, calm and emotionless. "You were warned." Drow raised his weapon and fired at the screen, furious, but the image didn't fade. "You think you can frighten us with tricks?" he shouted. The voice replied, "This is not a trick. This is a lesson." The ship's engines suddenly went to full power without command, spinning the Bloodfang out of control. The crew was thrown against walls. Systems screamed alarms. Then, just as suddenly, everything stopped. The engines powered down. The ship was floating, dead in space, surrounded by a silent swarm of invisible machines. The human voice spoke again. "We do not seek war. But if you come here again, you will not return." Then the face vanished, and the systems came back online. Slowly, painfully, the Bloodfang stabilized. The crew was shaken, terrified. Drow clenched his fists. "We go home," he said through gritted teeth. "But this is not over." When the Bloodfang returned to the Vorkal capital, its hull was scarred and burned. The Emperor's court fell silent when they saw it. "What happened?" the Emperor demanded. Drow knelt, trembling with rage and shame. "They didn't destroy us," he said. "They let us go." The hall erupted in disbelief. "Why would they do that?" one general shouted. Drow looked up slowly. "To send a message." He paused, his voice shaking. "They want us to come again. They want us to try." The Emperor laughed, but there was no joy in his voice. "Then we will give them what they want." He rose from his throne. "They think they can scare us with shadows and tricks? We are the hunters. Prepare the fleets. Call every warlord. I want their son to be the last thing they see before their world burns." The council roared in agreement, their voices echoing through the great chamber. But not everyone shared the Emperor's confidence. Deep inside the shipyards, engineers and soldiers whispered about what Drow described. The way the humans had controlled their systems, the way they had chosen not to kill. "Why spare them?" one asked. "Predators don't play with food," another said. Maybe they're not prey." The thought was dangerous, even forbidden, but it spread quickly among the lower ranks. Meanwhile, far from the Vorkal worlds, inside the hidden network of human defense stations, a meeting was taking place. Commanders watched the intercepted transmission from the Bloodfang. A woman in a black uniform stood at the center. "They're angry now," she said quietly. "Good." Her second officer frowned. "Ma'am, won't they send their full force?" She nodded. "They will. That's exactly what we need." The room went silent. Screens showed hundreds of Vorkal ships gathering light years away. The human admiral smiled faintly. "They still think we're just defending. They have no idea what's waiting for them when they cross that line." The others nodded. The signal that had started everything, "We are coming," was still echoing across space. But now, the real meaning was becoming clear. It wasn't just a warning to the Vorkal. It was a promise. Humanity wasn't hiding anymore. The first contact was over. The war for the stars had just begun. The Bloodfangs' return to the Vorkal capital sent waves of confusion and anger across the Empire. No one could believe that an entire warship, armed with the deadliest weapons in the galaxy, had been crippled without a single shot fired in return. In the Emperor's Grand Hall, the air was thick with tension. Massive holographic screens showed the damaged ship drifting back into dock. The Emperor's golden eyes burned with fury. "Explain," he growled. Commander Drow knelt before him, his armor cracked and his voice trembling. They knew everything, my lord. Our systems, our weapons, even our language. They were waiting for us. The hall erupted in outrage. One general shouted, "They must have spies." Another hissed, "Or stolen tech from someone stronger." But Drow shook his head. "No, they are different. Their machines think for them. Their ships move like shadows. They don't fight to win, they fight to warn." The Emperor rose slowly, his cloak dragging across the black marble floor. "Enough," he said. "No creature warns the Vorkal. They die. That is the law of the stars." Yet deep in his mind, even he felt something unfamiliar, a whisper of fear. Days passed, and the Empire tried to bury the shame. The Bloodfang was repaired, its crew silenced. The Emperor ordered a total communication lockdown, but it was already too late. Whispers spread among the people, rumors of the ghosts of Sol. Some said they could see human signals in the void, flickering through the stars. At first, no one believed it. But soon, strange things began happening. Military networks glitched. Navigation systems went blind for seconds. Entire cargo fleets lost contact, then reappeared days later with corrupted data logs. Every time, there was one phrase hidden in the code: "We warned you." The scientists tried to track the source, but it came from everywhere and nowhere. It wasn't a simple signal, it was alive, adapting, moving through systems faster than any virus the Vorkal had ever seen. In the Emperor's war room, panic was spreading behind the polished armor and cold words. "It's in our communication grid," one technician said. "We can't stop it." "Delete everything," barked a general. "Shut down every channel if you must." They tried. 4 hours, entire star systems went dark. But when they brought the systems back online, the message was still there. This time, it was longer. "You attacked our home. We are watching. We are learning." The Emperor smashed his claws against the table, shattering it. "They think they can frighten us with words? Let them come. We will burn their world." His generals shouted in agreement, but one scientist dared to speak. "My lord, what if they already are here?" The room fell silent. "Explain," the Emperor demanded. The scientist swallowed hard. "The attacks on our systems, the disappearances, it's too precise. They must have infiltrated our networks, maybe even our ships." The Emperor glared. "So you are saying humans are inside the Empire?" The scientist nodded slowly. "Yes, my lord. And they are watching everything we do." That night, across hundreds of Vorkal worlds, fear began to spread. On mining stations, soldiers saw strange lights in the dark. On border colonies, sensors detected phantom ships that appeared and vanished instantly. No wreckage, no proof, just whispers of something hunting them. Some called it human magic. Others said it was revenge. The Empire's mighty fleets began to hesitate. Captains refused to travel alone. Commanders demanded double patrols. But the fear only grew. Every intercepted transmission, every echo in the deep void carried the same tone, a calm human voice saying, "We warned you." Meanwhile, far away on Earth, humanity watched and waited. In underground command centers, screens glowed with Vorkal symbols. Human AIs had already broken into the Empire's systems, mapping every fleet, every station, every weapon. The admiral in charge, a woman named Catherine Rains, stood before a giant hologram of the galaxy. "They're starting to panic," she said. Her second officer nodded. "Just like we planned." She smiled faintly. "They think this is a war of ships. But this is a war of information. We control what they see." Her AI assistant flickered beside her. "Shall I send the next phase, Admiral?" "Yes," she replied. "It's time they understand who they're dealing with." Within hours, the Vorkal Empire faced a new wave of terror. On their main broadcast network, the same one used to command fleets, every screen lit up with a single image: Earth. A small blue planet spinning quietly in space. Then came the voice again. You thought you ruled the stars. You hunted the weak. You believed no one could challenge you. But you were wrong. The age of predators is ending. Then the screens went dark. The message disappeared as suddenly as it came, but the damage was done. Billions had seen it. Even the Emperor could not hide the truth now. The next day, a strange silence settled over the capital. No one dared to speak of the message, but everyone was thinking the same thing. Who were these humans? How did they know so much? How could a single world defy an empire that had conquered galaxies? The Emperor sat alone in his chamber, staring at the stars. For the first time in his long life, he wondered if he had made a mistake. Yet pride was stronger than doubt. They will pay for this insult, he said to himself. They will see what it means to defy the Vorkal. He pressed a command rune. Summon the Grand Armada. As the Empire prepared for war, the message continued to echo quietly in the background of their systems. Engineers tried to delete it, soldiers cursed at it, scientists tried to decode it. But it always returned, repeating in the same calm tone. We warned you. And somewhere, hidden behind a cloud of coded satellites, humanity watched as their plan unfolded. The predators had taken the bait. The first phase was complete. The second would begin soon. For the first time in galactic history, the hunters were afraid to look into the dark. And in that darkness, humanity was smiling. The stars above the Vorkal capital burned brighter than ever before. Hundreds of warships gathered in orbit, each one large enough to destroy a continent. The Emperor stood on the command bridge of his flagship, Obsidian Fong, staring into the endless void. His generals surrounded him, armor polished, eyes cold with rage. The humans think they can frighten us, the Emperor said, his voice echoing across the deck. They sent us ghosts and whispers. Now, we show them real war. The command was given. Within hours, the largest invasion fleet in galactic history began to move toward Seoul. Over 3,000 warships, dozens of carrier groups, and entire legions of soldiers launched into hyperspace. The stars seemed to tremble under their engines. For the first time in centuries, the Vorkal Empire was going to war not for conquest, but for revenge. When the fleet emerged at the edge of the Sol system, the commanders expected resistance. Missiles, fleets, defenses, but there was only silence. No movement, no transmissions, not even the human warning voice. Where are they? One general growled. Hiding, another said with disgust. Just like prey. The Emperor's image appeared on every ship's screen. Destroy everything, he ordered. Let their sun see fire. The fleet advanced, cutting through the asteroid belt with deadly precision. But something was wrong. The ship's sensors began to flicker. Then, one by one, the systems started failing. Navigation error, a voice called out. We're losing formation. Another shouted. Communications are dropping. Before they could react, one of the lead ships exploded into a ball of light. No warning, no enemy fire, just instant destruction. Then another vanished. Then another. Panic spread through the fleet. Who's attacking us? Shouted a captain. No visual targets. But the radar showed nothing. The void was empty. Suddenly, from the darkness, thousands of tiny objects appeared. They weren't ships, they were smaller, faster, invisible to standard scans. Drones. They moved like living things, weaving through the massive warships and slipping into their hulls. Within seconds, systems began to collapse. Lights flickered, weapons went offline, engines froze. The Vorkal ships, designed for brute strength, had no defense against this kind of warfare. They're inside our systems, someone screamed. They're tearing through our code. Then, the human voice returned, calm and steady as before. You were warned. Every Vorkal in the fleet froze. The voice came from their own ships, from their speakers, from their data cores. You came to our home with fire, the voice continued. Now you will feel what you brought to others. And then the attacks began. Human drones latched onto hulls, injecting nanocode into systems. Entire ships turned against each other. Cannons fired at allies, shields shut down, engines overloaded. The battlefield became chaos. From a distance, it looked like the Vorkal were destroying themselves. In the command bridge of the Obsidian Fong, the Emperor roared, "Find them! Destroy them!" But even as he shouted, the ship's own targeting systems locked onto a nearby destroyer and fired. The explosion rocked the fleet. The Emperor's guards pulled him away from the console as sparks filled the air. "We've lost control," cried his navigator. "Our code is compromised." The Emperor slammed his clawed hand against the controls. "Cut the power." But it was too late. The image of Earth appeared on the main screen, followed by human text, "You hunted the weak. We learned from the hunted." At that moment, hidden near Neptune's orbit, the first human fleet uncloaked. Their ships were smaller, sleeker, and moved like living shadows. The Terran Defense Armada had arrived. Admiral Catherine Rains stood on the bridge of the TDS Valiant, watching the chaos unfold. "They never saw us coming," her second officer said. Rains nodded. "They never do. Begin Phase 2. Dozens of human ships surged forward, firing silent blue energy pulses that struck with surgical precision. Each pulse shut down enemy systems without destroying them. Humanity didn't want to waste resources, they wanted to capture data, learn, evolve. As the human fleet advanced, the Vorkal realized too late that this was not a simple defense. This was a trap. Their invasion had walked straight into humanity's web. Ships exploded all around them, others drifted powerless through space, and still others turned on their allies. The once proud fleet of hunters was now prey, running blind through the void. The Emperor's furious voice crackled across what remained of the fleet. "Retreat. Fall back." But the order came too late. A new transmission cut through the chaos, human again, this time colder. "You invaded our home. You will not leave it." One by one, the Vorkal ships began disappearing, swallowed by dark gravity wells that opened around them. It wasn't human weapons, it was gravity traps, precise and invisible. Whole cruisers vanished into nothing, never to be seen again. The Emperor's ship barely escaped, limping through hyperspace with half its engines destroyed. The once mighty Obsidian Fong fled into the dark, trailing smoke and broken metal. When the surviving ships finally regrouped outside their empire's border, the silence was unbearable. Of the 3,000 warships that had left for Earth, fewer than 200 returned. The generals stood pale and silent, unable to look the Emperor in the eyes. He stared at the star map, showing the path back to Seoul. They let us live," he whispered. The generals looked up in shock. "What?" He turned to them slowly. "They could have finished us. But they didn't. They want us to come again." Back on Earth, the Terran fleet hovered in formation. Admiral Rains stood at the viewport, watching the last Vorkal ships retreat. "They'll return," her officer said. She nodded. "Of course they will. That's what predators do." Her eyes narrowed. "But this time, they'll find the galaxy has changed." In the silent darkness, the human fleet powered down and vanished once more into stealth mode. The war had begun, but for humanity, it wasn't a war of survival anymore. It was justice. The galaxy had long feared the Vorkal. Now, they would learn to fear something else, the quiet, calculating wrath of humanity. The hunters had become the hunted, and the stars would never be silent again. The defeat at Seoul shattered the illusion of Vorkal supremacy. Across their empire, fear crept into the cracks of pride. Entire worlds whispered about the humans, how they had turned an empire's greatest fleet into dust without a full-scale battle. The Emperor sat alone in the dim light of his throne chamber, his claws tapping against the cold stone. His advisors stood silent, afraid to speak. The once mighty Obsidian Fong was still under repair, and the scars on its hull were reminders of humiliation. For the first time in history, the Vorkal were unsure of their place among the stars. They had always been the hunters. But now, Something was hunting them. The Emperor's rage burned like a dying star. "They mock us," he said in a low growl. "They think they can scare us into hiding. We will remind them who we are." He stood and turned toward his council. "Summon the high strategists. Prepare the shadow fleets. If they fight with machines and ghosts, then we will become shadows ourselves." His voice was sharp and desperate. But even as he spoke, the humans were already several steps ahead. Deep in the void between galaxies, human intelligence networks were listening to every word. They knew the Emperor's plans before his own generals did. Humanity had mastered the art of invisibility, not through cloaks or tricks, but through control. Every Vorkal ship still carried fragments of human code hidden in its systems, sleeping, waiting. Admiral Catherine Rains watched the Vorkal's frantic movements from her flagship, TDS Valiant. The fleet hovered silently in deep space near Titan Station, a massive human command base hidden beneath the moon's methane clouds. "They're gathering again," her second officer said. "Over 500 ships preparing to strike." Rains nodded slowly. "They haven't learned." "Good." She turned to her AI commander, a holographic projection of shifting blue light. "Activate the Ghost Network." The AI's voice was calm and emotionless. "Confirmed." Releasing infiltration swarm. Thousands of invisible data probes scattered into hyperspace, each carrying code fragments designed to infect Vorkal ships. Humanity wouldn't meet them head-on this time. They would bleed them from the inside. A week later, chaos erupted across the Vorkal front lines. Ships vanished mid-jump, stations lost power, weapons misfired. Fleets turned on each other, thinking they were under attack. It was silent warfare, cold, efficient, devastating. Human infiltration programs whispered through enemy systems, changing coordinates, shutting down oxygen, even sending fake orders to commanders. On one planet, a Vorkal mining colony suddenly detonated after its reactor overloaded. The investigation revealed the systems had been rewritten remotely. No trace of who did it. No trace, except for one phrase left on the main console: "We warned you." The Emperor grew paranoid. He executed several of his own engineers, believing them to be human spies. But the fear didn't stop spreading. Some Vorkal soldiers refused to fight. Others began to question their purpose. "If they can destroy us without firing," one captain whispered, "then what chance do we have?" On several border worlds, rebellions broke out. Alien species enslaved by the Vorkal saw humanity's power as hope. They rose against their masters, chanting a new name, the Liberators of Soul. Humanity hadn't even reached their worlds yet, but their legend was already spreading like wildfire. Meanwhile, Admiral Rains and her fleet began the next phase. The Terran Armada entered Vorkal space quietly, not with a massive force, but with precision strikes. One by one, they liberated enslaved planets, cutting off the Empire's supply lines. The humans didn't destroy cities, they took control of them and gave them back to the people. On every liberated world, they left behind a simple message broadcast across the galaxy: "The hunters have fallen. You are free." It was the kind of message that the oppressed had never dared to dream of. For centuries, no one had dared to challenge the Vorkal. Now, the impossible was happening before their eyes. The Vorkal military tried to respond, but their fleets kept failing. The humans always seemed to know their next move. Every ambush turned into a trap, every trap into a massacre. On one battlefield near the star Vora, 7, an entire Vorkal armada disappeared after their navigation coordinates were changed mid-jump. The humans didn't even fire a shot. They simply opened a black hole in the data itself, turning the enemy's technology into their weapon. "How can they do this?" cried a commander. The Emperor's only answer was silence. He had no explanation, only anger. On the TDS Valiant, Rains watched as reports came in from across the galaxy. 5 systems liberated, her officer said. 17 enemy fleets neutralized. She looked out the viewport at the stars. "They thought fear could rule the galaxy," she said quietly. "Now they'll learn what it feels like to fear." The human fleet had become a ghost in the dark, appearing without warning, striking without mercy, then vanishing before the enemy could react. To the rest of the galaxy, humanity had become a myth, a story told in hushed tones. The predators had been dethroned, and in their place, a new power was rising, one that did not conquer for glory, but for balance. Desperate, the Emperor called for his last loyal commanders. "We cannot win with ships or soldiers," he admitted. "We must break their spirit." He ordered the construction of a doomsday weapon, a massive star core cannon capable of destroying entire systems. "If we cannot rule the stars," he said darkly, "then we will burn them." But even as his scientists began their work, the humans were already aware. Their networks had infiltrated the Emperor's inner council. Every secret meeting, every whispered command, it was all being recorded by human eyes. That night, as the Emperor stood on his palace balcony, staring into the endless dark, a voice echoed faintly through the comm system. A human voice. Calm, familiar. "You're losing, Emperor," it said. "You ruled with fear. But now, fear belongs to you." The Emperor looked around wildly, but there was no one there. Just the sound of the stars, and the whisper of his own breathing. He knew then that the war had changed forever. The turning tide had come. Humanity was no longer the unknown race from a forgotten world. They were everywhere, unseen but unstoppable. The hunters had lost their place at the top. And in their place, humanity stood tall, not as conquerors, but as the new guardians of the galaxy's balance. The galaxy was no longer the same. Once, the name Vorkal had sent fear across every star system, but now whispers of humanity traveled faster than any light signal. On every planet once ruled by the predators, the enslaved species watched the skies with hope. The humans had become something more than soldiers. They were symbols of rebellion, of survival. Yet for the Vorkal, hope had turned into a nightmare. Every time they tried to strike back, their fleets fell apart. Every trap failed. Every plan was already known. It was as if humanity could see the future. But the truth was simpler. They understood their enemy better than the enemy understood themselves. Humanity had learned the oldest lesson of all: knowledge wins wars before they begin. Admiral Catherine Rains stood in the command chamber of TDS Valiant, surrounded by glowing star maps that displayed the vastness of the Vorkal Empire. Thousands of red dots blinked, each one an enemy stronghold, each one already under surveillance. "Phase 4 complete," reported her AI officer. "All communications within the Vorkal core systems are now under human control." Rains gave a slight nod. "Good. Begin the next step." The AI tilted its holographic head. "Psychological operations?" "Exactly," she said. "We've beaten their fleets. Now we break their spirit." Within hours, strange transmissions began flooding Vorkal networks. At first, they seemed random, images of battles, static-filled voices, but soon they grew darker. The messages showed recordings of human victories, Vorkal soldiers surrendering, worlds turning against their masters. But what terrified the Empire most was that the messages were sent from their own military command centers. Every time they tried to stop it, the systems restarted and replayed the same message: "You hunted the weak. Now you face the strong." Entire battalions began to lose morale. Captains refused to leave orbit. Commanders questioned orders that might not even be real. The Empire was crumbling from the inside. The Emperor grew more unstable each day. His palace had become a fortress, guarded by elite soldiers who no longer trusted even their own communications. He shouted at his generals during meetings, accusing them of betrayal. "You think I don't see it?" he roared. "They're inside our minds. They want us to turn against each other." His generals stayed silent, but they knew he wasn't wrong. Humanity's strategy was not to destroy the Vorkal, it was to make them destroy themselves. Meanwhile, humanity's leaders gathered in the secret Soul Command on Mars. The great red planet was no longer empty dust, it had become the heart of a rising galactic power. Dozens of admirals, scientists, and strategists stood around a glowing table. Admiral Rains looked at them, her expression calm but firm. "They're collapsing faster than predicted," said a scientist. "The AI infiltration worked perfectly. They can't tell what's real anymore." Rains folded her arms. "Good. But we're not here for revenge. We're here to end this cycle. They've ruled through fear for centuries. We'll rule through strength and reason." Another officer asked, "Do you really think they'll surrender?" Rains looked out the window toward the stars. "No," she said quietly. "Predators never surrender. They only stop when they're extinct, or when they understand fear." The next human operation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of sending fleets, they sent messages directly to the enslaved worlds. "Rise," the broadcast said. "You are no longer alone. Humanity stands with you." The response was overwhelming. Across hundreds of systems, rebellions ignited like wildfire. Factories built for war turned against their Vorkal overseers. Weapons once aimed at slaves were turned on their masters. Humanity didn't need to conquer those worlds, they liberated themselves. Everywhere the rebellion spread, the humans appeared briefly to help, then vanished into the stars again, leaving hope behind. In the Vorkal capital, the Emperor watched the chaos unfold from his throne. "They're tearing everything apart," whispered one of his ministers. "The outer colonies are gone. Even our allies are turning against us." The Emperor's voice was low and filled with despair. "How did they do it?" The minister hesitated. "They fight differently. They don't seek victory, they seek understanding. They know us better than we know ourselves." The Emperor clenched his claws. "Then we'll remind them what fear feels like." He turned toward the dark chamber beneath his throne. There, hidden in the shadows, scientists worked on the Empire's last weapon, something that could burn entire star systems at once. It was powered by a dying sun and built from forbidden technology. The Emperor smiled bitterly. "If we cannot win, we will take them with us." But humanity already knew. The same AI that had broken their networks now listened to every heartbeat in the Emperor's command room. On Mars, Admiral Rains stared at the intercepted data. "So this is his final move," she said. "A star weapon." Her officer nodded grimly. "It could destroy us all if he activates it." Rains looked calm. "Then we stop him before he even tries." Within days, human stealth ships slipped into the Vorkal home system. They didn't attack. They didn't reveal themselves. They simply shut everything down. Power grids went offline. The weapon's core froze. Alarms blared across the palace. The Emperor rushed to the control room. "What happened?" he shouted. "Sabotage." His chief scientist trembled. "No, my lord. It's them. They're inside the weapon." A screen lit up with human text. "You learned nothing. We warned you." The Emperor fell to his knees, his eyes wide with horror. For centuries, he had been the one who brought fear. Now, he was the one who felt it. The room filled with the same calm human voice that had haunted his empire since the first encounter. "You called yourselves hunters," it said. "But you forgot what it means to be prey." Far away, aboard the TDS Valiant, Rains received confirmation. "The weapon is neutralized," her officer said. She looked at the stars, her face unreadable. "Good. The galaxy will have a chance to heal." Humanity had not only won through power, they had won through patience, intelligence, and restraint. They had proven something greater than domination. They had shown that strength meant control, not chaos. As the Vorkal Empire crumbled and the liberated worlds began to rebuild, one message echoed across every channel, in every language, across every star: humanity fights not for conquest, but for freedom. The galaxy, for the first time in millennia, began to hope again. And in that fragile hope, the legend of humanity grew, not as conquerors, but as the unstoppable survivors who turned the predators into prey. The war that had once shaken the stars was finally ending. The Vorkal Empire, once the most feared civilization in the galaxy, was reduced to scattered fleets and broken worlds. Their proud banners lay in ashes, and their thrones stood empty. The predators who had hunted others for millennia were now the hunted themselves. Across countless systems, freedom bloomed like dawn after endless night. For the first time, entire species could look up at the stars without fear of the Vorkal's shadow. Yet at the center of it all, one truth remained clear: humanity had changed everything. They had not come to rule, but to redefine what power meant among the stars. On the flagship TDS Valiant, Admiral Catherine Rains stood before a vast holographic display of the galaxy. The red zones of war had turned to green, peaceful, liberated regions. "Report," she said calmly. Her officer smiled slightly. "Vorkal command structure has collapsed, Admiral. The Emperor's last fortress is silent. No transmissions for over 72 hours. Rains nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "Then it's over." Her AI assistant flickered into existence beside her, its blue form glowing softly. "Not yet," it said. "They will try to return. History always does." Rains sighed. "Then we'll make sure history remembers the truth. This war wasn't about domination, it was about survival." Meanwhile, deep within the ruins of the Vorkal capital world, a lone figure wandered through the remains of the Emperor's palace. The air was filled with smoke and dust. Statues of victory were cracked and fallen. The last surviving Vorkal commander, General Crothul, moved slowly through the wreckage. His armor was broken, his claws stained with ash. He looked up at the stars through the shattered ceiling. "You humans," he whispered. "You've done what no one ever could." He picked up a fragment of a human device, still glowing faintly. On its screen, a message repeated over and over: "Peace through strength. Strength through unity." Crothul closed his eyes. "Maybe you were the predators all along." Back on Earth, humanity celebrated its greatest victory. Cities that had once lived in fear of extinction now shone brighter than ever. From the floating colonies of Neptune to the domed cities of Mars, people gathered to watch a live broadcast from the United Galactic Council. Humanity had been offered a seat, a permanent place among the stars as the leading power of the new era. The hall was vast, filled with thousands of representatives from newly freed worlds. The air was alive with hope and fear in equal measure. When Admiral Rains stepped onto the stage, the entire chamber fell silent. She looked across the crowd, her voice calm and clear. "We did not seek war," she began. "We sought survival. And in our survival we found strength. Not just to fight, but to protect. The galaxy has known fear for too long. It's time it learns something new: trust." The crowd erupted into applause. For the first time in recorded history, every major species agreed on one thing: the humans had earned their place among the stars. But even as peace spread, humanity did not forget the lessons of war. The Terran Defense Fleet remained active, not as conquerors, but as guardians. They patrolled trade routes, protected weaker civilizations, and dismantled old Vorkal weapons before they could fall into the wrong hands. On distant worlds, human engineers helped rebuild cities once scorched by war. Human teachers shared knowledge freely, and doctors cured diseases that had plagued entire species. Where once humans were seen as primitive newcomers, they were now viewed as leaders of a new galactic age. But peace was not without its challenges. In the shadows of forgotten systems, remnants of the Vorkal still plotted revenge. Small fleets hid in nebulae, waiting for a chance to strike back. One such fleet, led by a surviving warlord named Esarelok, gathered near the edges of the Andromeda Rift. "They think we are broken," he hissed to his crew. "But we are not finished. The humans will learn that the Predator's spirit never dies." Yet, even as he spoke, his ship's lights flickered. The screens turned black, and a human voice echoed through the comms. "You should have stayed hidden." A bright pulse lit the void, and the fleet vanished without a trace. Humanity's reach now extended far beyond what anyone had imagined. In the following years, a new alliance emerged: the Galactic Accord, a union of worlds built on cooperation and defense. Humanity was its core. Admiral Rains became its first supreme commander, guiding not through fear, but through wisdom. She visited liberated worlds, meeting leaders who once saw humans as myths. The universe is wide, she told them. But peace must be wider. Under her leadership, the Accord brought prosperity to systems that had known only war. Trade flourished, science advanced, and cultures began to blend. The galaxy entered what historians would later call the era of unity. Yet, among the stars, there were still whispers, tales of the humans' secret power. Some said their AI still watched every corner of the galaxy. Others claimed they could predict wars before they began. The truth was simpler. Humanity had learned that real power wasn't in weapons or fleets, it was in understanding. They studied their enemies, learned from them, and turned their own arrogance against them. And in that knowledge, they became something more. Years later, on a quiet night aboard TDS Valiant, Admiral Raines stood alone in her command room. The stars shimmered outside, endless and silent. Her AI companion spoke softly. "You've changed the galaxy, Admiral." She smiled faintly. "No. Humanity changed itself. We stopped running. We stopped fearing the dark." She looked toward the distant glow of the galactic core. "Do you think they'll ever return?" The AI paused. "Perhaps. But if they do, we'll be ready. Because this time, the galaxy will stand together." As the ship drifted silently through the void, a final message was sent out to every world, a message that marked the end of an age and the beginning of another. From the shadows of fear, humanity rose. From the ruins of war, we built peace. We are the Watchers now, the guardians of the stars. And as that message echoed through the infinite dark, one truth became clear. The predators were gone. The hunted had become the protectors. And humanity, born from a small blue world long forgotten by time, now stood as the keepers of a new and brighter galaxy.